Imagine a bird the size of a grizzly bear, running at you at 30 miles per hour, with a beak designed to snap bone like it's a breadstick. Yeah, extinction wasn't mercy, it was self-defense. After the dinosaurs tapped out, Earth didn't exactly chill. Nope, Mother Nature went full chaos mode, smashed the reset button, and started crafting new monsters from scratch. Out of that dino-free experimental phase came something unexpected. Not lizards, not mammals, birds, massive pissed-off birds. And the worst of them? The terror birds. The first name on the roster? Paleopsilopterus. Rolls off the tongue like a Latin spell, but the vibe is all horror movie teaser. This little menace was nature's prototype, a rough draft of doom. Just 1 meter tall, about stork-sized, but with an attitude. It strutted through the hot, steamy jungles of what's now Brazil about 53 million years ago, dodging croc tanks and giant snakes like it was playing a prehistoric survival game on hard mode. Sure, it wasn't the biggest, it wasn't even the meanest, but Paleopsilopterus had one thing going for it: speed. And in the wild, speed is the beginning of every bad idea. It's the first domino that leads to evolution saying, let's make this thing way scarier. And so it began. Just a few million years later, its cousins started showing up jacked, angry, and way taller, like nature had put them on a strict creatine and chaos regimen. Enter Eleutherornis, taller, bolder, and way more confident. But here's the twist. It didn't stay in South America. Nope. It somehow managed to flap, run, or float its way all the way to Europe. Yeah, one of these murder birds showed up in France and Switzerland. No passport, no warning, just vibes and violence. By then it was clear. The terror birds weren't just evolving, they were spreading. Fast forward to the Oligocene epoch, and the terror birds basically said, playtime's over. They bulked up like they'd been hitting a prehistoric gym on a steady diet of protein and nightmares. Enter Paraphosornis. Picture this: a 400-pound, 4.5-foot tall slab of bird muscle. If you crossed an MMA fighter with a velociraptor and then wrapped it in feathers, you'd get Paraphosornis. It didn't bother with flying. Why bother when you can stomp, kick, and tear anything in your way? This bird hunted like it was gunning for a championship belt, hammering prey with kicks, powerful jabs, and a beak that could turn bone into confetti. But this wasn't some mindless brute on a rampage. Paraphosornis was wired with a hunter's intelligence. CT scans of its fossilized skull showed a brain tuned for advanced sight and hearing, almost like a living radar system. It could track, target, and launch with scary precision. It wasn't just a tank charging forward, it was a strategic tank, calculating every strike, knowing exactly how to dismantle its prey. In the Oligocene ring, Paraphosornis wasn't just fighting to survive, it was built to dominate. Then came the holy trinity of terror birds: Titanus, Kelenkin, and Brontornis. The prehistoric big three. Each one was bigger, meaner, and more ridiculous than the last, like evolution was throwing a final boss rush just to see what would stick. Let's start with Titanus, the wild child. The rebellious youngest sibling who didn't just stay home in South America like the rest of the family. No, Titanus packed up its talons and strutted across the newly formed land bridge into North America during the Great American Interchange. This bird was bold enough to invade the turf of saber-toothed cats and dire wolves and say, "Yeah, I live here now." It terrorized what's now Texas, Florida, and California before they were known for spring break or real estate scams. Standing around 6.5 feet tall and running like a freight train on stilts, Titanus wasn't just a predator. It was a panic attack with feathers. But if Titanus was the rogue adventurer, Kelenkin was the monster from the myth book. Literally. It's named after a fearsome spirit from indigenous Tehuelche mythology. And that's not just branding. This bird was almost 10 feet tall, with a head bigger than a horse's. A head bigger than a horse's. Its beak wasn't just for show either. It was built to crush bone and split spines. One swing and it's over. No dramatic chase, no second chances. Just one brutal hit, and boom, lights out. You wouldn't even have time to scream. Maybe just a surprised blink before it turned you into leftovers. Then, there's Brontornis, the final boss, the tank, the prehistoric juggernaut nobody asked for. Standing nearly 9 feet tall and weighing in at a jaw-dropping 900 pounds, Brontornis was so big that even scientists weren't sure what to do with it. For years, paleontologists argued over whether it even counted as a true terror bird. Some claimed its toe claws looked suspiciously herbivore-like, suggesting maybe it was just a massive, grumpy vegetarian. But then they looked at the vertebrae and went, "Oh, never mind. Those bones had predator written all over them." Even if it wasn't a true carnivore, Brontornis was still a walking brick wall. It didn't need to be fast. It didn't need clever ambush tactics. It just needed to exist in your direction, and you were in trouble. You couldn't outrun it. You couldn't outfight it. Your best hope was not being around when it stomped through. In a world full of killers, Brontornis wasn't just big, it was inevitable. But terror birds weren't just about size. They were fast, like Usain Bolt would have eaten their dust fast. Paleontologists took a close look at their leg bones and realized these birds were engineered for speed. Think of an ostrich, but on nitro boosters. Short, powerful thighs for explosive takeoff, long, slender shins for stride length, and oversized feet for traction. It's like nature threw together the ultimate sprinter and then gave it a giant knife for a face. Some of these birds could hit speeds of over 30 miles per hour. That's faster than most people drive in neighborhoods. And they weren't little lightweights either. These things stood twice as tall as a human, weighed 10 times more, and still ran like they were being shot out of a cannon. And this speed? It wasn't for showing off. It meant business. It was about ambushing prey, chasing down anything that bolted, and getting out of dodge when a bigger monster showed up. Because even at the top of the food chain, terror birds weren't the only killers in town. They shared their world with saber-toothed cats that could crush spines, prehistoric crocs the size of speedboats, and meat-eating mammals with serious attitude problems. Sometimes the best strategy wasn't to fight. It was to run like hell and live to terrorize another day. Now let's talk about their senses, because terror birds weren't just fast and freakishly strong. They were basically prehistoric motion detectors wrapped in feathers. These things were living, breathing predator drones. Let's start with the eyes. Forward-facing, which gave them excellent depth perception. A must-have when your job involves calculating the exact moment to launch your 300-pound body at something skittish and fast. And unlike most modern birds, they weren't stuck with daylight-only vision. Whether it was blazing sun, soft twilight, or the dim light of early dawn, terror birds could spot you moving. No matter how careful you were, they saw it. But let's be honest, you probably weren't careful. Because even if you thought you were sneaky, their hearing would have wrecked you. Terror birds had ears tuned to low-frequency sounds. Think deep rumbles, footsteps in underbrush, the subtle rustle of fur brushing against leaves. You couldn't sneak past them. Even if you tiptoed like a ninja in socks, they'd hear you coming. Picture this. One of these birds, standing statue still in the thick jungle, head cocked slightly like it's daydreaming. But it's not zoning out. It's laser-focused. It already knows exactly where you are. It heard you the moment you took that first hesitant step, and now, it's just doing the math on how fast it needs to hit you to end things in one strike. It's like if Batman had feathers, laser hearing, and absolutely no moral code. So what did take them out? Because clearly, these weren't fragile one-trick birds. They were apex predators for millions of years, built like tanks, fast as hell, and sharp in every sense. Not exactly the type to just vanish without a fight. For a long time, the story was simple. North American predators, like saber-toothed cats, big dogs, and early bears, crossed into South America during the Great American Interchange and wiped them out. Neat, tidy, and satisfying. The underdogs or overdogs came in and took the throne. But that version? Turns out it's mostly wrong. When paleontologists started looking closer, they noticed something weird. Many terror birds were already declining, long before the North American predators showed up. And Titanus, one of the biggest and baddest of them all, didn't just survive the interchange, it thrived. It marched right into North America and held its ground for millions of years, side by side with wolves, saber-tooths, and giant bears. That's not extinction by competition. That's holding your own at the Predator Olympics. So what actually did them in? The real villain was climate change. Slow, creeping, and brutal. Earth's long-term cooling trend didn't just make it chillier. It reshaped entire ecosystems. The thick, lush forests that terror birds relied on, they thinned out. Open grasslands started replacing them, and that's bad news if your hunting style depends on shadows, cover, and ambush tactics. Suddenly, prey was harder to sneak up on. Trees gave way to space, and in space, the nimble, adaptable predators win. The ones who could change their diet, shift their range, or pick up new tricks. The bigger terror birds, the specialized ones, they didn't stand a chance. Their size became a liability. Their finely tuned killing methods stopped working. Even Epicyon, a dog the size of a lion, with jaws that could crush bone, couldn't hack it when the environment flipped. The Ice Age didn't play favorites, so yes, some competition mattered. But the real knockout punch came from a changing planet. Speed, adaptability, and flexibility beat out raw power and perfection. Specialization made terror birds kings, but it also made them vulnerable when the kingdom changed. So yeah, these prehistoric birds were absolute monsters. Not in the Jurassic Park way, but in a way that's even scarier because it actually happened. Feathers, speed, intelligence, bone-crushing beaks. Terror birds were proof that evolution doesn't mess around. If you enjoyed this trip into the nightmare zoo of Earth's past, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment about which prehistoric predator you'd never want to meet in a dark forest. Or better yet, a bright one. Because with these guys, daylight didn't help much either.